In the 1970s, nearly every household in America had a husband as the main breadwinner. But for many people today, that script has flipped. In almost half of American marriages, women now earn either more than their husbands or just as much. And that's despite the fact that women still only make about 84 cents for every dollar that a man earns. But what surprises me most isn't actually that women are catching up financially. After all, nearly 2/3 of all college graduates these days are women. It's that while the earnings gap is shrinking, the gap in housework hasn't budged an inch. In marriages where the husband and wife make the same amount of money, women still spend 4 more hours each week than their husbands do on childcare and chores. I've written a few books on trends like this involving marriage and work and relationships, and one of the experts I trust the most is Liza Mundy. More than a decade ago, she saw this shift coming in her book, The Richer Sex. She interviewed hundreds of couples and found that the hardest part of this change might not actually be the money, but navigating the ways that relationships change when someone new becomes the breadwinner. So I called Liza up to find out more about what happens inside marriages when women start earning more than their husbands, and what advice she has for young people thinking about getting married. What interests me about this is that it's a sort of social shift that is almost happening in silence within marriages. There's no guidebook for couples where the wife is earning more than the man. I mean, I did research on this that showed in couples where the wife is the primary breadwinner, they actually lie about it on the US Census form. They try not to have this as a public thing. So in the couples you've studied where it starts out in a sort of, I don't know if let's call it a traditional earning pattern where the husband earns more than the wife, and then things change, the wife's earning capacity becomes more, and obviously we are talking about relationships between a man and a woman because that's
Yes.
what's really changing here. How does a successful marriage navigate that shift?
Well, I think in a successful marriage, the husband steps up to the plate to provide in a different way, domestically or with childcare, and the wife has enough sense to be grateful for that and appreciative and find other sort of a broader definition of providing. It depends on the couple's willingness to be flexible and to adjust their expectations within marriage. In my book, which was published some years ago now, I was optimistic about our being able to adjust to this what is likely to become a new reality. I think so. I'm still tend to be optimistic, although I do think right now we're in the middle of a cultural backlash against it. So, as within so many cultural changes, I think there will be 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
And is it really this sense, do you think, from men that this is not my father's world, it's not my grandfather's world, it's a promise broken? Is there
Well,
something in that too?
I don't know how many men wanna go back to their father's or their grandfather's world. I think, there's an argument that the 1960s and the whole cultural revolution of the 1960s was men saying, "We don't wanna be factory workers necessarily, or we don't wanna have the hard life that our dads had." You would really, I think, have to ask men about this. But I would think that men would be sort of all over the map about that. I think men, certainly the data shows that men are glad and grateful to have more time with their children and to feel free to take the kids to school, to carry the baby in, a Snuggie or push it in a stroller. I mean, I just see this everywhere. I realize I live in a blue city, but I see it everywhere. I see it. I have family members in the South, in the Midwest, and I think men are extremely grateful that they can culturally, in an acceptable way, spend more time with their kids and be very involved fathers. But really, we'd have to have a panel of men here to ask, do you want to go back to the 1960s? Do you want to go back to the 1940s? Probably don't want to go back to the 1930s.
You paint actually, Liza, despite what we're seeing, and you've referenced it as something of a bit of a cultural backlash, you paint a picture that is pretty optimistic, I think, between couples and their ability to navigate what is a quite a radical social shift in the last couple of decades of women having a different role in marriages. Is that how you feel?
I still do feel that way. If you look at it's the sociological literature, and often one study sort of builds on other studies, and it tends to become kind of a common wisdom. The idea in sociology is that often women are punished at home when they become the breadwinner. But if you look at economics and economic literature on this phenomenon, what they find is that women get more bargaining power in their households, right? Because that's how economists sort of look at things. The family, like anything else, is a bargaining unit, and you have to become leverage and bargaining power. And having money, having funds, bringing money to the household does get women more bargaining power in their relationships to advocate for help around the house, or more active male involvement in childcare. And I tend to side with the economists in this. And ideally, in couples, there'll be enough flexibility that you can trade back and forth without feeling stigmatized or holding it over the person who's at home.
If you were to give advice, Liza, to a young, high earning woman who was planning on getting married in this environment, what would you say to her?
Well, I would say to be flexible in terms of who you're willing to partner with. And I do think, I mean, I don't think it's ever been easy in human history to find the right person, right? And I don't know that it's any harder now than it's ever been. But I think for young women looking around at the dating pool or the marriage pool, it is a fact that they are likely to be better educated than the man they're dating or the man that they might marry. And you do have to adjust your expectations, and it's a complicated thing because, what your parents want for you or what society expects is not necessarily, the reality of the world. So I guess I would comfort I would comfort young women and say, it's never easy to find the right person at the right time in your life, and I do think it's harder for women because women who wanna have children, they know that this needs to happen by a certain age, and I think there's less flexibility for women that way.
We interviewed Scott Galloway recently, and he painted a pretty stark picture of we have talked about the struggles that women are facing in adjusting to this new reality and being better educated, but society still expecting things from them in terms of housekeeping and childcare. What about young men in this situation? How did they become flexible in their expectations and society's expectations of them?
Well, I mean, to a young man, I would say, and I have said, get as educated as you can. I know that many young men who come from uh, families with a strong sort of working class background really are expected after they leave high school to join the workforce and to start earning. And I respect that, and it's an enormous pressure. But I would still say, in today's economy, pursue higher education to the extent that you can, because it's going to give you a longer life and more flexibility, I think, and as the workplace changes. But then in terms of partnering, uh, y- you know, step up at home. But again, I really think that's happening, and I honestly don't think it takes that much for women to be really appreciated. You know, cook, make her coffee and tea in the morning, or whatever. Find ways to provide at home in private. I mean, again, I sound like this is like cliched relationship advice, but really to keep communicating about it, and be generous toward each other and affirmative and appreciative. I'm sorry, I sound like
I
a litany of romantic cliches now.
I love the romantic cliches, and I
Same.
think actually we are in a little bit of an era where this is being sort of struggled through in silence by a lot of couples. So talking about it along with that cup of coffee sounds like a great idea. Liza Mundy, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Katty. Yeah, it's great to be here.